Welcome back, everybody, to Ein Sof Learning. This week's Torah portion is Pekudei. Pekudei literally means accounts or amounts, and it is found in the book of Exodus, chapter 38, verse 21. And we see that in the past 4 parshas, there's been a lot of repetition, and we do see some repetition again this week with the construction of the Tabernacle. Now, the difference between the previous portions and this week's portion is that in this week's portion, the construction of the Mishkan becomes complete. They are done with the construction of the Mishkan, and it is now time for Hashem to fulfill his end of the deal, which was to dwell among the people once they build this Mishkan. Because that was the original commandment that Moses received from God, which was that you shall build me a Mishkan, and I will dwell among them. That was God's words to Moses. That if we build a sanctuary for him, then he will dwell among us. And it's from there that we learn that the Mishkan, this sanctuary, is not a physical structure, although it is understood as a physical structure as well. For example, a synagogue or the Holy Temple of Jerusalem. These are comparable to the Mishkan that God instructs us to build. But from the language of that verse that God says he will dwell among them, implying that he will dwell among the people, we see a hint that this Mishkan is not only a physical building, that God will dwell in this building, but rather it is also a spiritual building that each and every single person can build for themselves. Now, what does that mean? Where would we build it? What are the construction materials? Where are the supplies? Where's the site? What is this spiritual sanctuary? It is the character traits, and we've talked about this before. I'm not going to repeat it in this week's video, but just a quick, couple sentences on that for those who don't know. This spiritual sanctuary symbolizes your character traits. Whenever you build and improve and refine your character traits, you're actually building a sanctuary that is then capable of receiving the light of Hashem, which really means your soul. Your soul is part of Hashem. Especially when we're talking right now, we're talking about souls, we're talking about Jewish souls. The Jewish souls are different, not superior, but different to the souls of the nations. The difference lies in their origin. The origin of the souls of Israel are in God himself, meaning that the souls were extracted, so to speak, from God. God is the whole, while the Jewish souls all are their parts from the whole. That's why the book of Eov, the book of Job, says that the soul is a part of God above, meaning chelek Eloha mimal, that the souls of Israel are part of God. So what does that mean for us here in this physical world? That means to whatever extent that the Jewish people are in touch with their souls is the presence of God in this world. The presence of God in this world depends on Israel being connected to their souls, which means you need to first build this Mishkan. You need to first build this sanctuary in order to receive the light. Because the soul is the light, while the body is really the vessel that is capable of not only receiving the soul, but it actually reveals the soul in this world. It reveals God's presence in this world. The body is a tool that facilitates the interaction between the soul and this world. If not through the body, then how else will the soul interact with this physical world? So the soul needs to first embed itself in a physical container, what we call guf, this body that we have. And it is through clothing itself in this body that it is then able to exert its influence in this world by controlling the body. The soul should be in control, not the other way around. But the unfortunate, circumstances that we find ourselves, it's not like it's a coincidence, it's not by mistake that things are this way. is that the body tends to control the soul. Now that's the nature of this world. It's not something that we should, complain and say, Hashem, this system is rigged or corrupt. Rather, it's something that we should scream out to Hashem and say, Hashem, please give me the power. Please give me the strength to rise above the nature of my body, which wants nothing but to receive for itself alone, and tap into the nature of my soul, which wants nothing but to give, wants nothing but to share. So the soul and the body are in many ways opposites, but they need to learn to work together, like a husband and a wife. In fact, the soul is compared to a husband, while the body is compared to a wife. So these two entities are really in a relationship. Without one of them, the other one is not able to fulfill its job. They need each other. They are meant to be together. The soul is in the spiritual worlds. It's not physical. So without the body, the soul remains in the spiritual worlds and it is unable to fulfill its mission. The mission of the soul is not in the spiritual worlds. The mission of the soul is to reveal light in the physical world. Otherwise, why would we have been brought down here? For what reason did God cause us to be in this physical world? Why not just have us remain in the spiritual worlds? And it's evidently because there is a certain mission, there is a certain tikkun, rectification, that needs to be taken place down here, which is why we're sent. But on the other hand, a body without a soul is unable to truly function. I mean, on the one hand, a body without a soul isn't alive. It doesn't have any animation. A body is just clay and bones and flesh. It doesn't have any life on its own. The fact that man was made from the dust is not enough. God needed to blow a soul of life, nishmat chayim, in through the nostrils of Adam in order to give him animation. Without the soul, the body is not able to truly function. Although these days, it's very important for us to know that there are no longer any new souls. The new souls have ended. There are no longer any new souls coming into creation. So any person that exists in the world today can bet that they are a reincarnation. They are a reincarnation. Because, again, there are no new souls. So if you exist down here, then you can be sure and rest assured to know that you've been here before. This isn't your first time here, but it could be your last. Although it may not be your first time here, there are certain steps that we can take in order to ensure that it will be our last. Now, why would we want it to be our last? Because on the one hand, the longer we're down here, we're able to acquire more merits through performing commandments, doing acts of kindness, learning Torah. The service of Hashem that we perform down here is seen as much more valuable than if we didn't have the hardships that we have with this physical world. Meaning being in this body, in this flesh that wants to receive and it's selfish and it's evil, gives us a certain challenge, a certain hardship, certain tug of war, again, between the soul and the body. And if we are successful in subduing the inclination of the body and rising above to tap into the soul and operate from the soul level while we are doing our service, then that is actually transforming the darkness of this body into light. It's not just to subdue the influence of the body. It's not enough. You might say that that's step number one. to subdue the selfish desire of the body. But it's not complete. Step number 2 is to then transform that selfish desire into a godly desire. Your body is made of Ra. It's composed of Ra. Ra means evil. That's the building block of the body. Meaning, when we take the word Ra, it's Roshei Tevot, it's initials, we get 2 words. Ratzon, Atzmi. Selfish desire. So what does it mean that the body is made of Ra? It means that it's composed of selfish desire. The essence and the nature of the body is selfishness, reception, taking. It doesn't know how to give. The soul can teach the body because the soul's essence is to give. The soul's essence is altruistic. So this tug of war that we're constantly fighting within is the essence of all human experience, whether suffering or pleasure, pain or pleasure. All pain and all pleasure that a person experiences in their life is a direct consequence of this inner war that is constantly being fought within. Based on our thoughts, our speech, our emotions, and our actions, we have the power to change our destiny. That's the free will. The free will is not in choosing what clothes I'm going to wear today or, what meal I'm going to get, what meal I'm going to buy. That's not where the free will really lies. The free will is in the good and bad choices that we're faced with. Those circumstances that we have the potential to self-satisfy, but in that moment we choose not to, but instead to give. That's an act of transformation. That's an act of restriction that paves the way for a new light to be introduced in creation. So the construction of this sanctuary then becomes our life's mission. What exactly is it that the soul was sent down here to do? I understand that you want us to reveal some light, but how do we do that? Number 1. But even if I do it, if I reveal light, then what? Then what? It's like the age-old question. When Mashiach comes, then what? When the Messiah finally arrives, what's next? What, that's the end? Okay, so the Messiah is here. There's no more growth? There's no more advancing? We plateau? Does the stock market plateau? There's no such thing. There's no such thing as a uniform stock market. There's always ups and downs. So how can there be existence in a post-messianic era? It must be that even after we achieve our so-called goal of revealing the light within this world, bringing the Messiah, spreading the Torah, etc., it's only uphill from there. To even greater heights of goodness, to even greater heights of holiness. We go from a reality where it's good and bad to a reality where it's good and better. Because the good and bad is a consequence of us eating from the tree of knowledge. When Adam ate from the tree of knowledge, he introduced the concept of good and bad in the world. Prior to eating from the tree of knowledge, there was no real concept or revelation of these two categories. Rather, life simply was. It was the tree of life. Etz Chaim, that means that the world only knew life. It didn't know death. Can you imagine a world where there is no death? Can you imagine your future where it's only uphill? It's hard for us to understand what that could possibly mean. We only know goodness because we can compare it to something that is not good. So what does it mean that there will be something good, but something better? That's exactly what it is. There's not going to be any bad in the world to come. No death in the world to come. What you thought was good is just a level of good. There are greater levels of good. There are greater levels of holiness. So in the world to come, there is no going from down to up. No going from bad to good. There will be no longer a need to go through darkness in order to appreciate the light. Rather, the light that you thought was bright is called darkness in comparison to the next light that's waiting for you to achieve. What you think is light is similar, it's like a darkness relative to where you will be once you grow even more. So life is constantly growth. That's what life really is. And that's the only thing that's constant in this world. Not only in this world, but in reality in general. Change. Growth. But there's two types of change. There's a type of change that you change for the worse. And then there's a type of change that you change for the better. The more we acquire the personality of selfishness and egoism and evil and wickedness, self-satisfaction, etc., body consciousness, the more that we are building our Egypt. We are building our Egypt. Not only we're not building the tabernacle, but instead we are tearing whatever tabernacle we may have built in the past. We're tearing it down. And in its place, we are building our slavery. We're digging a pit. We're digging a pit where it could very well be hard to get out. Not impossible. Unless you hit depression. Rav Nachman famously says that a person can hit such a low level of despair that unfortunately they can get stuck. So it is possible to get stuck. It is possible to get stuck. That's why we need to help each other. Because you cannot make it on your own. Even if you don't have each other, you still can't make it on your own. You need Hashem. But all the more so, it's not good for man to be alone. And this is what we said earlier, that there is good, but there's also something called better. In Hebrew, we say tov versus tov me'od. Very good. Good versus very good. Not to mention that me'od, the word me'od, is same letters as Adam. And Adam is a human, person. It's tov me'od. You can become tov me'od. A person can reach a level that they're not just tov. Not only they've subdued their evil inclination, then they ended up transforming it. But rather the heights that you're able to reach are exceedingly good, exceedingly high, beyond what you ever would have thought it was possible. So we put in the work in building this Mishkan during the 6 days of the week, and Hashem will give us a reward that is beyond what we deserve, beyond what we truly earned. The reward, the light, the connection with Hashem is beyond any effort and anything you could ever possibly earn. It's not equal to the amount of work that you put in. The reward is greater because the reward is eternal. It's forever. While the work is temporary. Sure, it's painful. Sure, it's difficult. No pain, no gain. But the gain that comes from this work, that comes from this pain, is beyond what makes sense given what you actually did to earn it. The actions that you performed in order to quote unquote earn this reception, this reward, It wasn't because of the action that you earned it. It's not equal. You cannot measure it. Rather, it's because of the kindness of Hashem. That He sees your toil and He sees your effort and He sees your struggle, that He has mercy on you and He gives you good. The righteous people don't feel entitled to reward. They toil hard. They work hard to build this Mishkan, to help others build their Mishkan. But they never feel entitled to a reward. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was asking to go to Israel and God said no, he never complained and said, look at my deeds, look at all I have done for you. Look at how, it's really amazing when you look at what Moses did. Of course, for the Jewish people, but that he was able and he was willing to go along with Hashem's plan. And he did so fantastically. He never once complained and said, look at what I did for you. Why can't you do this for me? Why can't you have me go to Israel? He never complained. Because he recognized that the will of Hashem is what's best and what's good and what's true. If His will is different from the will of Hashem, it shows misalignment. It shows disagreement. It is when we align our will with the will of Hashem that we merit to see miracles in our lives. Because it's not our desires, it's Hashem's desires working through us, but we have opted in. We have opted in to God's plan. We're not trying to get God to go with my plan. Rather, we're trying to change our plan to align with His. The pathway forward is straight. It's inward. Now, the deeper you go, you're eventually going to hit a nekudah, a point that we call emet, the point of truth. This point of truth is felt right here. The light of the neshama, the light of the soul, extends all the way down to here. Its origin is in the brain, in the head of a person, but its influence extends down to the chest area, in between the two pecs. It's called nekudah chazeh. Nekudah chazeh means the point of the chest. The point of the chest. The little dip that we have over here, I think it's called the sternum. It's a hard, solid middle area here. In the top part of the chest, right here, right above here. That's the nekudah chazeh, and the influence of the soul extends down to that point. So the deeper you go inward, eventually you're striving, what you're really trying to tap into is this point. It's a point of truth. Of course, if you can find it in your mind, then that's also very important. But the point is that if you don't have the vessel, you cannot connect to the neshama in the mind. So you need to start building from below to above. We build our vessel from below to above. The Mishkan is something that we build from below to above. So we have to build our way up from the heart. The heart is the origin place. The heart is right here, is located to the left, right here. It receives the influence from the neshama, from this nekudah chazeh. So we must go deep in our own heart. Investigate our inclinations. Recognize that there is a lot of unconscious, selfish desires in us. Sigmund Freud was a famous Jewish psychoanalyst. He was not religious or spiritual. But interestingly enough, his theories of psychodynamic theory, psychoanalysis, aligns very well with what Kabbalah describes regarding human psychology and human behavior. That most people in the world, they think that they're good. They think that their desires and their inclinations are pure, they're good people. What Freud revealed was that when you dig a little bit deeper, you recognize that there's a tremendous amount of mud. A tremendous amount of mud that exists in the unconscious that may be controlling our conscious. And we think that our desires are good, but when we dig deeper, we see that they're rooted in something that is self-serving, in which case, what Freud is explaining is correct. But if you dig deeper, and this is the main message, if you dig deeper, the Lubavitcher Rebbe famously says, if you dig deeper, Viktor Frankl famously says, if you dig deeper, you find diamonds. Eventually, the further you go, as dark as it may be, and most people don't even know how dark it is because they've never checked. If you've never checked, then maybe you're ignorant to this. Maybe you don't know. You don't know that there is a tremendous amount of darkness. Or maybe you're a tzaddik. Maybe I'm judging you unfavorably. Maybe you're righteous and you're completely pure. In which case, you shouldn't be watching this video. You should be giving a class and teaching me. I need to take your classes if that's the case. So rather, we need to investigate, but the deeper we go, eventually we will hit this point of truth. This point of truth lies at the essence of our soul's yearning to be revealed. We can feel the yearning of the soul. That's where you feel it. You don't feel the yearning of the soul in the mind. The mind is the vessel that the neshama, the soul, wants to be revealed in. The neshama reveals itself in the mind. But it takes the heart to pull it. It needs to be pulled, received. So we need to activate the desire of the heart. But make sure we're tapping into this point of truth while we're doing it. That's what we call hishtokekut. Yearning, longing for what? To receive the neshama, to receive the soul. The deeper that we yearn, the deeper that we desire, and that we act. This is the main thing. The main thing is not about sitting and crying and, feeling emotions. Or even if you're doing it through joy. That's not even the main thing either. The main thing is the actions that you're willing to do despite your discomfort, despite your hardship. What actions are you willing to actually do? Which means, how big is the Mishkan that you've been building? Because the way you build this Mishkan, yes, it's true, you build it through your character traits. But eventually, what's the purpose you're building the Mishkan? What's the purpose you need the character traits? It's to be able to do the will of Hashem. To be able to fulfill it. To fulfill the mitzvot, meaning the commandments of Hashem, means that you have them checked out on the level of the mind, the heart, but also the body. Thought, speech, and action. These are the three garments that a person has. It's these three tools. The power of action, the power of speech, / the power of emotion, and then there's the power of thought, wisdom, mental power. Three tools that we've been given in this world. The tools are not the hammers and the bricks and the mortar and the stone. That's not... The tools Hashem gave us is not necessarily going to be the military and the bombs. And the real toolkit that God gave us is within us. That doesn't mean don't use the tools in your surrounding environment, like artificial intelligence, like equipment, the way that I'm doing here. It means use them as well for the right reasons. Use them as well for the right reasons. That takes true discipline. That takes wisdom. And that takes a genuine desire, a sincere longing to connect to Hashem. That's why we should purify our hearts. Now, when we go inward and we investigate our heart, we will see a lot of darkness. And throughout all of this darkness that we examine, it brings us to a place where we can react. We will react. So how are you going to react when you see the darkness? Are you going to shrivel up in fear? Or are you going to be strong and exercise the 13 attributes of mercy? You recognize you're a flawed individual, but you also understand what's the source of that inclination. So therefore, you don't hate yourself for it. You're not inherently evil because you have those traits, because you have those desires. Rather, you are a mishkan in the making. The raw materials are within you. All of those unconscious motivations, those are the building blocks. You need to take them, clean them, and build the mishkan with it. Every character trait, every desire, every motivation that you examine that is impure, we should take it, clean it, and use it to build the mishkan. That's what it means to purify your heart. And only when you have a pure heart can you serve Hashem sincerely. If you don't have a pure heart, then even if you're doing the mitzvot and you're praying and you're doing the movements, which are essential, but if it's not a pure heart, then you're not serving Hashem with sincerity. That's why there's a famous verse that says, Taher libenu le'ovdecha be'emet. Purify our hearts so that way we can serve you with sincerity. We say it every day in the daily shacharit prayer. So I hope that this class was able to inspire you. Despite the technicalities of the portion itself, we can draw this inspiration from the symbolism of the Mishkan. And if you enjoyed and learned something new, please like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video.